well, I'm going to talk about the experiences that we had starting up a new open source operating system project. I'm formerly from Nexenta, now actually unaffiliated at the moment, it turns out, but working on getting that changed pretty quickly. So anyway, without further ado, we'll move on. Okay, so illumos, what's an illumos? For those of you who don't know, so illumos is this new operating system project that we started. It's based on Solaris, Open Solaris, the core of the operating system, really the kernel and core libraries and some core system utilities. But the concept here was to do something by the community and for the community. It turns out that as part of this, because the technology that is comprised in the illumos operating system or illumos core is so attractive, and it has a licensing that is also attractive. It's become the core for a number of commercial products, some of which have announced their usage and some of which have not. And I know that there's at least a couple more in process. So what's the roots here? So SunOS, so BSD started a long time ago, and SunOS, for those of you who are graybeards, will remember SunOS. Turns out Solaris still has this thing called SunOS, which is the core, but I'm really talking about SunOS 3, SunOS 4, the BSD-derived things. Sometime in the 90s, early 90s, there was this project inside Sun to merge System 5 Release 4 with that and create a product that became Solaris, known as Solaris. And then, let's see, Deidre, how long ago was this? This was like, when did Open Solaris come out? 2005, right?
Yeah.
So in 2005, before Oracle acquired Sun, considerably before Oracle acquired Sun, there was an effort to open source Solaris, and this became Open Solaris. Not all of it was open, but it was a big deal. There was a lot of very cool technology in there, some of which we'll talk about here. What I don't want to do is use this as an opportunity to evangelize illumos. What I want to do is talk about our experiences starting up this project that we created from Open Solaris, and I'll explain why we had to do this, called illumos. So I announced illumos August 3rd of 2010. Actually, it was really cool. We rented a room in the Chrysler building and did a webinar from there. Turned out we could have done it from anywhere, but I got to go to the floor high up in the Chrysler building, so that was kind of cool for me. So why illumos? Again, we had Sun, and Sun had produced this great operating system, and Sun was really committed to open source in general and open standards. And Sun's background heritage going to open standards goes back, all the way back to NFS RPC. If you think about Sun's original market proposition, the idea was they needed a level playing field to compete with Microsoft. So they're very interested in open standards, or we're very interested in open standards, because the belief is if everyone is playing by the same open standards, then the best implementation wins, right? And that's something that the Sun as a technology company felt that it could compete on an open playing field, a level playing field. Well, sometime a few years ago, Oracle acquired Sun, and Sun is gone. And Oracle has a different vision, right? So Oracle's vision is primarily around supporting their databases, and anything that doesn't lead to revenue isn't interesting to Oracle, right? Open source doesn't lead to revenue. Open source is about, from their perspective, is about feel-good feelings. Now, I think many of us in this room, maybe all of us in this room, understand that there's more to it than feel-good feelings. But it's a difficult proposition at the CEO level for Oracle to see, open source leads to revenue. And everything in Oracle is about revenue. Well, so, hence, illumos. Actually, this, as kind of an apology, I was having a lot of fun with Keynote. So, the real back history here is that I started illumos before Oracle had decided to kill Open Solaris. And we started with this concept that we wanted to work together with Oracle to provide a community outlet, and a community home for technologies that would be derived around Solaris, but which Oracle, for business reasons, wouldn't be interested in taking. So let's say there's some driver for some Wi-Fi part. Oracle has no interest in supporting Wi-Fi in their operating system, right? How does that help a database? How does it help a database appliance, like an Exadata? But yet, communities want to be able to integrate these things, and for various reasons, the quality really at its heart, driven by quality. Oracle had a bunch of processes which made it difficult for them to take contributions from the community, and impossible to take ones if they were not just not aligned with their business, but in conflict with their business. So, for example, an open source version of a device driver for an HBA that Oracle had closed code that they had a partnership, from that HBA's hardware vendor for. And I'm not going to name HBA vendor names, but there was cases like this. So illumos the idea around illumos was to be able to take these things and allow the community to have an open home. The other thing here was, so there was this fear. What happens if Oracle shut off the tap? And I remember giving a big explanation about why that would never happen. Not going to happen. Not going to happen. There's all these business reasons why Oracle would be insane to turn this off. 2 weeks later, that was Friday the 13th. I think it was Friday the 13th, wasn't it? There was a memo that was leaked, and some of you may have seen the memo. And basically, boom, no more source drops for the Open Solaris kernel. So they didn't close the source, but they didn't release any. They've not released any updates to the Open Solaris kernel since. There was a leaked version of source that came out, kind of on BitTorrent. It's floating around there. I haven't looked at it, and I encourage you not to look at it. Just trying to avoid tainting. But apart from that, there's no code has escaped Oracle for that portion of the kernel, from basically the kernel. So I talked about the tap already. One of the other things that was happening at this time was that there was a distro called Open Solaris, and the distro was late. A bunch of promises had been made, soft promises for we'll have a distro released, an update at such a date. And people saw, well, Oracle had just fairly recently acquired Sun. A lot of the communication channels had closed down, and this distro was way late. So there's a lot of pessimism in the community. Well, the thought was, let's do something to inject a whole bunch of optimism in this community and turn it around on its head, because we believed, and I in particular believed, that there was still a lot of good things here in the in the illumos community. Well, it wasn't the illumos community; it was the Open Solaris community, and we wanted to provide a source for hope and optimism and a positive outlet. So this was part of our mission. And after the illumos announced, what we found is that optimism is really key to having a successful community. And you got to show some good positive energy, and I'm pleased to say that the illumos community has had a very positive amount of energy, a lot of really good things going on, a lot of good pace. Pace is really important too. If a project looks stalled, like stale, then people forget it, they just tend to ignore it. So, in fact, there's this olo.net, where one of the metrics they use is, what's the activity level of the project, and if the activity level falls below a certain threshold or seems to be declining, it throws up some alerts. And it's not that you want to use that necessarily as the only metric, but it is certainly, it's a reflection, I think, of a human metric that we all think about. Does this project look like it's still got a number of committed developers and activity and change going on? And we can argue about whether that's a good metric or not, because I think for some projects you reach the point where you've reached a stable point, maybe you don't need a lot of change. But for an operating system, I think energy and pace is important. The other thing was this avoiding the FUD, right? So all of this negativism, oh, what's Oracle doing? It was all about Oracle. And with illumos that changed. It was no longer about Oracle, it was no longer about FUD, it was about the positive things we could do. The other thing, and this was really, really key, was that when we created this new operating system project, we had to show something valuable beyond just the optimism. There had to be some meat to it. So what was the meat? In our case, it was some new code. There was a problem, a 5-year-old problem at the time. A significant portion of the C library was closed. So I went off and before we did our analysis, I went off and spent a bunch of time rewriting significant portions of that C library, largely lifting from BSD, but also adapting and enhancing, and some of the changes have actually gone in both directions, and we'll talk more about that in a bit. But the key thing here was that we had to show something. We could not, you can't just be all empty words. It has to be something to show, right? Something, and at the same time I was able to demonstrate on the call, well, okay, so it wasn't as useful on the call, but I think there was later a video, and subsequently I also demonstrated live some actual, okay, here's illumos booting, and you can see it come up through Grub, come up in X Windows and GNOME, and log in and let people play with it. And it showed that we were actually doing something. And that was really important. As the project has grown, participation in events like Scale last year, we were here last year. Last year was, so the project is less than 2 years old. So Scale 9 was our first event, and it was great. We got a lot of positive feedback at the booth. We had media. Unfortunately, this year we don't have media. I guess we didn't pull it together this year. I don't know why not, but and people were trying out the media. We had T-shirts. Actually, this year we do have T-shirts, so go check out the booth. I'm wearing last year's T-shirt. What we found though is that the community event's not just an illumos event, but an event that is maybe kind of more foreign, if you will. Like Scale is a Linux event, but if you walk downstairs, you'll see that there's a whole bunch of other operating system projects, right? People who aren't just Linux. So there's a greater community, and these events are great for expanding your reach as an operating system project. We had our user group meetings. Actually, we just had our first official illumos users group meeting. Before that, we were pretty much hijacking the Open Solaris user group meetings in the Bay Area. But that has formally become now an illumos users group meeting as of, what, about a couple weeks ago, right, Deidre?
Yep.
One of the illumos partners, actually my former employer, runs an open storage summit, and at that open storage summit we had a hackathon, and the hackathon was awesome. We got a bunch of really smart people in the room, and we developed some really cool technology. So there was about 4 or 5 different projects that came out of that. Actually, I got to work on some code I hadn't worked on before around ZFS, which was really cool. But there was stuff around dtrace, ZFS. Tended to mostly be ZFS and dtrace because that's what people wanted to work on. But again, it was a great way to develop some things, and then from that, you're now able to message back out to the rest of the consuming community of, look, there's cool stuff going on. People are doing really cool things. Get involved, right? Going forward, FOSDEM, FIS, so other events we'll be doing, not just Scale. Scale is kind of an easy, natural home to some extent for illumos because, number one, I'm here. I live, 2 hours drive from here, but also it's close to the Bay Area, so there's a bunch of people from the Bay Area who come down. So it's a nice, easy home for us. So that goes back to thinking globally, right? So I talked about FOSDEM and FIS, which are not in California. So at Sun, there was this ivory tower. The ivory tower was this building called Menlo Park 17. All of Solaris was engineered in Menlo Park 17. If you weren't in the ivory tower, it was very difficult to get changes integrated. Or put another way, maybe it wasn't very difficult, but it was sure a lot easier when you were in Menlo Park 17. So one of the things as an open source project you have to do, a new project, is really expand your reach, and it has to really be global. So it's got to go outside of not just a building or an area, a local geography, or even a continent. And this does create some interesting challenges with language and culture. We've had some interesting cultural challenges, I'd say, around Germany, for example. And there's a certain level of impedance mismatch, and that creates a challenge, but overcoming that challenge is really important to keeping the growth of the project alive.